Welcome back to Birds with Words. I'm your host, Sean Fitzgerald. Once again, we have Faith with us, and we are going to be going over the other two Resident Evil games. We just couldn't get through it previously. And I'm not a terrible host. I waited until Faith got a little bit better feeling over her cold. So today we're going to finish where we left off. We have Resident Evil 3, the remake, Resident Evil 4, its subsequent remake, which came out, and was it last year or is time's gone by? I think it's been out for 2 years now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be honest with you about Resident Evil 3. I played the OG Resident Evil 3, and I did not play the remake because of the bad reviews that came out. But I did watch somebody play through it, so I don't feel like I completely missed out. But let me just start with you on Resident Evil 3. I feel like 3 is where we started seeing Resident Evil kind of deviate. A lot of people point to 4, but I think 3 is where it really started. But I think the best mechanic, and again, you're the one with the video game background, not me, was the Nemesis. When he was introduced, we thought it was going to be like the previous games where he shows up at certain sequences, it's scripted, and it wasn't that. You had a constant threat that was hunting you in areas that you even thought were safe, and he would just come into the room. But what was your impression? Have you even played Resident Evil 3?
Yes, I did play Resident Evil 3, and that mechanic is gave me so much anxiety. That's the worst mechanic in my opinion. Even though it's brilliant in that it leaves a constant threat, it's stressful, especially when you're trying to have a calm gaming session, and then you have to worry about this guy coming into the room. That's things that we're playing other games and you're like, okay, what if he comes into the room now? Am I truly safe? Because you have that trauma from that. But one of the good things they added to Resident Evil 3 was actually the dodge mechanic as well. So you can actually move out of the way when he was coming at you, even though that really didn't do much when he's chasing you all around the place.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say that if you're playing Resident Evil in the first place as a calm gaming session, there's probably something else wrong with you. But I'll let somebody else have that conversation. I remember getting into it, and I kind of gave this away when we were talking about the first couple games, was that I played it with Dino Crisis, which is a different gaming experience, but similar in vein of the terror of it. Mm-hmm. But I was a little bit more used to the constant running because the Dino Crisis had the faster moving adversaries. Mm-hmm. We didn't see that in Resident Evil until Nemesis, and I gotta just say, I'm going to start with the opening sequence. No Resident Evil opening cutscene has been as cool as the original Resident Evil 3 game yet. And I'm not going to lie, that was the biggest thing that said, hey, there's something wrong with the remake when they didn't do that remake cutscene. And anybody out there who's listening to this, you got to go back there. You got to look at it. They do this entire scene with all the Raccoon City Police Department, how they're trying to set up roadblocks and stop people, and the zombies come through and they overwhelm the local police department. Mm-hmm. And then Umbrella, they send their special forces teams. They trying to rescue civilians, right? Which becomes a big dividing line later in the game story, and mm-hmm. they get overwhelmed. So from a storyline, it really gave that perspective that we were missing in 2. And again, I have to just kind of add this for anybody who's listening who hasn't experienced the story. 2 and 3 happen almost concurrently, where parts of 3 starts before 2 does, and then parts of 3 and 2 line up, and then 2 ends and 3 continues a little bit longer, and then it ends. So story-wise, that's how these two mash up. Is there anything you want to tell you about the beginning sequences of the original Resident Evil 3?
Well, unlike the other first 2 Resident Evils, you are pushed into a threat in the beginning after the sequence. So you're sitting there and you're watching this beautiful opening, and that one shot of the reflection of the zombie in the helmet it comes right to mind when I think about it. But I think that the opening really drives you into the story and what to expect, and how everything's going to play out.
Yeah, and it's the first time that in the Resident Evil series that you feel like you're in a larger environment. Mm-hmm. So, we had the mansion. 2, we had the police department. But with the exception of the sewers and the labs that you go to, you don't really go beyond anything in there. Whereas when I remember playing Resident Evil 3 and feeling like I was able to explore some of the city, which is, not to get ahead of ourselves, a little bit where I feel like the remake did a disservice to retelling the story, was it felt super linear to me. I didn't feel like I was missing anything just watching it the first time through. And I've heard other presenters say the same thing, that you felt like you were on rails, and you're scripted with the events where Nemesis shows up. And I also have to give a shout out to Nemesis. The original design for Nemesis was just phenomenal. It wasn't the weird human body that had a heart on one side and a big claw. You have these like weird pipes coming out of him. His face all stretched and everything. And we start to get a little bit more of the backstory of how big Umbrella is. So in the previous games, we knew that they were an international pharmaceutical company, but it's not until 3 that they're giving out like Nemesis is a project from the European theater of Umbrella sent for specific multinational tasks of assassination and neutralization. So from that side, it's, at least from the story writing side, it's expanding on what we already know, and we get a little bit more depth which is what I feel like a lot of series in other genres struggle with, is they don't know how to expand on what was already done well. So the remake, did you play the remake?
So I did not play the remake of 3 and 4.
Oh no.
They're in my shopping cart though.
You're missing out on 4. I can't speak for 3, but 4 you're missing out. But okay. Have you seen any of the gameplay from 3?
I saw a little bit. I was more interested in 4. So when that came out, that's when I was like watching a little bit more from that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. In the original 3, what was your favorite, like 1 or 2 parts of 3 that stand out to you?
I feel like in 3 they kind of recycled the sorry, cat knocked down something. They kind of recycled, because I was thinking before this, I was thinking about 3 a little bit, and I kind of realized they recycled the betrayal of Wesker in 1, what they did with that team that came in to supposedly rescue them. So even though I think I played 3 more than I played 1, because I played 3 and then 1 and then 2. So 3 is more in my head than most of the other games. And it's a bit recycled from the first game. And you mentioned something earlier that it's more linear, which is very true, because you have the constant threat of Nemesis. There's not as many puzzles as there was in 2 and 1. And you don't have to like constantly go back and solve this and do like go back into different places to unlock this or solve this puzzle because you finally got the clue for something else. It was more like a sequential events happening and then you follow along. So when you said that a 3 kind of deviated from 1 and 2, that was I think the main part is that instead of being kind of in a box where you have like a lot of things to do, it kind of like went a straight line. And even though like the graphics are similar, the acting and stuff is all similar, the gameplay really deviated from that. So it became more of a I'm trying to find the right word for it, more of a linear story and gameplay than a box puzzle as the other games.
Yeah, and it's also the first game where instead of having a story A and B, they give you options where that changed the outcome of the game.
Yeah, the 3 different endings.
Yeah, so for those who don't remember or didn't see the previous episode or didn't play the Resident Evil games, and you guys are all losers, kidding, of course. But in 1 and 2, as we discussed, you had different characters, and each character when you beat the game, you could go back, play that character, and you saw their sideline or side of the story. In 3, you really only have Jill and her continuation from her story in the first game, but there's no other character that you control after her. So what they did was there's a series of events that happen, and you make a decision, and that decision impacts the way the game turns out later on. So there was a lot of replayability that still came out of
Mhm.
the original three. I did, like I said, I did watch the remake of three, played all the way through, and that's completely gone, which I thought was terrible.
Mm.
Nemesis doesn't hunt you continuously, which is also something that I thought was unfortunate. He shows up in scripted element areas, and that's it for him. And they cut a lot of content. So there, for me, there are certain elements that stand out in three. So the cutscene at the very beginning, obviously they changed that, and they put Nemesis in a trash bag, which is very unusual. Then after that, they cut out the waterway that doesn't show up in at all. She goes straight
Mm.
through to the railroad station. There's an element where you think that she's going to go into the waterway, and she just crosses a bridge, and that's it. There's that entire section's gone. And another section that a lot of people said was very unfortunate that they cut out was the graveyard, which is in the original area where you ran into Gravedigger, which was a mini boss all in itself. And that's gone, cut. It was never re-added in an expansion. And then the bell tower, they completely cut the bell tower out. So there's a lot of areas where I feel like they probably just needed to spend a little bit more time on three to make it its own game. And I'm happy I didn't spend money on it, just because at the time period, I just bought the remake of two, and I was really excited to play three because that's the game that really sticks out in my mind when I think of Resident Evil now. But I saw so many people say that, and after watching, I was like, "Ooh, this looks like it could have just been an expansion to two." There's probably going to be somebody who's in love with the remake of three. And then Jill's infection. She gets orally sexually assaulted in the remake of three, and that's how she gets infected. Which then you play as Carlos and you go hunting for a way to help Jill. Very unusual deviation from the way the original three laid out. I don't have a ton more to say about three. I'm going to talk your ear off about four, but is there anything that you want to talk about on the three side?
You mentioned Dino Crisis earlier, and one thing that I loved about three is that Dino Crisis and three came out at the same time, so there was kind of like a skin of Regina from Dino Crisis that you could, after you won the game, when you can unlock it, you get to play as a Regina skin, which I always thought was kind of cool, and I always kind of like connected those two games together some way, and like a crossover could have been really, really, really cool.
Yeah, and actually, that's how I got introduced to three. Was I bought Dino Crisis, and when you bought it on the old Jewel case, you could open it, and in the back, you could open it. It had a demo of three in the back, and I was like, "This is a really cool game." So after I, got to the point where I couldn't beat Dino Crisis as a kid, I beat it since then. But since I remember playing that, and then I went back and went to the store a few months later and bought Resident Evil 3, and that's how I got introduced to Resident Evil. Then went back and played the old games. Now I think that 3 is where we start seeing the deviation in Resident Evil to being more action packed. It just had a little bit more of a flow to it. People always say that 4 is where it really changed. I think 3 led up to it.
They say that because of the gameplay, how it's not really a static third-person shooter. It's more of a camera following you first-person shooter, and like the style is different. But if you really like look back at what we said before, how like the way Nemesis works, how there's no puzzles, how you're in Raccoon City and you're exploring more, the deviation is already there, even though the graphics look the same.
That's exactly where I was going to go with that. I'm happy you said it. Is that I don't think Resident Evil 4 would have been the commercial success that it was if they would have stayed with tank controls. I know that there's people out there who absolutely love tank controls. It's a nostalgia thing to me, but I think that we've moved beyond that. And there's ways to do it in modern games, but I don't think 4 would have been successful the way it was if they would have stuck with it, especially if they wanted to keep enemies moving quickly, which tank controls are not beneficial for fast moving anything. So I'm going to talk about the story side to 4. unless you want to talk about anything development wise between 3 and 4.
You can talk about the story, and then I'll jump in and say.
So story wise, 4 kills off our biggest antagonist in a cutscene. So right at the beginning, they get announced Resident Evil's big bad guy, the Umbrella Corporation, they went bankrupt. So they tried to cover up what happened in Raccoon City, which are the events of 2 and 3. The nuke from the government didn't work out. People slowly started figuring it out. They learned about the bioweapons, and that's how they kill it off. There's Leon Kennedy, who returns from Resident Evil 2, just announces it in a voiceover. That's probably the worst part of 4 for me, with the exception of like what we'll talk about in the different phases of 4. But this is where we realize that we're not playing a normal Resident Evil game anymore. You're able to run very quickly. You're in a behind the shoulder view. And the biggest storyline change, though, is you're not dealing with zombies anymore. It leads you up to thinking that it's going to be zombies, something when you enter the cabin for the first time. And as we move through the game, it's a plaga type parasite that is able to take over a host and then is a giant hive mind. So there's a master, a king, whatever you want to call them, saddler. He's up there at the top, and he controls whoever has these different types of parasites inside them. As well, it takes a very long time for the parasite to mature. And that's when we start learning that there is a slight connection between the Umbrella Corporation and the research they did and the parasite, and they're kind of 2 different lines of evolution. And where the T-virus failed to make a easily controlled member, the parasite was naturally like that because it's a hive mind, but it's a natural occurring parasite. We learned that there's a long history of this parasite being out there in like the 13th and 14th century, and then the Spanish king decided the cult that was worshiping them was too dangerous, so the king, along with the Catholic Church, did a crusade against the cult that was there, wiped them out, hid them underneath a castle, like the last fossilized remains. And it's not until our modern day that a cult reemerges. They dig up these fossilized parasites, and they're still alive. And then it starts the outbreak, and Sadler comes along, takes control of it, and it's just downhill from there. So gameplay wise, I already kind of touched on it. I'll let you expand on it more because it's your forte, but it's over the shoulder now, right? Not tank controls, very action oriented. I'm just going to hand it to you. What do you want to say about the change between 1, 2, and 3 to 4?
Well, you have more options in fighting. Like if someone gets close to you, you can knife them or kick them, which is really nice. You don't rely on scarcity anymore. They added a store system, but they got rid of the storage, which was actually kind of annoying because I kind of wanted to keep a lot of things. But they give you a bigger inventory as well. A lot of more different weapons you can use. They also added dismemberment now, where you can like do headshots, knee shots, but also you can get chainsawed, which is stressful. So you had to like be careful with those ones that have sharp objects that come up to you. They added a store as well.
The merchant. Probably the most memorable thing, if anything, was
what are you buying?
Yeah, only stranger. I learned recently this, like, that voice actor is the same guy who did Leon Kennedy. I was like, what?
Really? That's him talking to himself?
Yeah, I was like, that's so weird. So he's just doing 2 sides here.
Which was also very weird because like you're running around killing these things, and you walk up to this guy who's just trying to like make a bag.
Yeah, and they give you no explanation to him whatsoever. And
it is what it is. That's it.
Yeah, and if you zoom in on him in the original game, I haven't done it in the remake. He's infected. Like he has, he has the plaga eyes going on. So And you can kill him, and on the harder difficulties, if you kill him, he doesn't come back, which is hilarious to me. But
Yeah, but also,
I'll,
I mean, it kind of like, you deserve it if you're killing the guy when he's just trying to sell you things.
yeah, but at the same time, I'm surrounded by bad guys. You're just gonna they're like, oh, you don't have enough gold, no ammo for you.
Yeah, but also like you don't have to worry about ammo because like you have your knife and you have your CQC abilities now instead of just relying strictly on guns with little ammo.
Yeah, they changed a lot. And I'll also say that they made it much more. I hate saying it this way, but I don't know another way to say it. They made it much more like a Japanese anime action cartoon with Leon's very bravado in his approach.
Mhm.
He has some of the corniest sayings in the middle of it. He has this back and forth with a couple of the bad guys, and
Mhm.
it's like a bunch of Japanese artists got together that were huge fanboys of like 1980s American action movies, and
Mhm.
they wanted to just make a fanboy emulation of that with a
Mhm.
Japanese storytelling. Um, none of this is an insult for anybody who's listening. It's very funny listening, going back and seeing how corny the original Resident Evil 4 was, but it was terrifying, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm going to say this right now. Somebody out there asked about 4 or 5 days ago. This is January 25th right now, so somewhere around January 20th. They said, "What is the best openings level for a video game ever?" And everybody has some like classics listed. I said, "No, it's Resident Evil 4." Because there are games out there that wish they could end as hard as Resident Evil 4 started. That village scene, anybody who's played through the village sequence at any given time, that scene stays with them for the rest of their life because you're not going into it like Resident Evil 1 and 2 or 3. You have an enemy that now coordinates against you. And I don't speak Spanish. My wife pretends to speak Spanish. But if you listen to what they're saying, they're coordinating against you and they're trying to tell each other where you are, what you're doing. And you see a little bit of that in the cutscene. Like if you go into that far left building early on and you shut the door and you barricade it, they send a guy with a chainsaw out after you and he cuts through the door to come get you. Um, they'll try and cut off your route. So if you're trying to run around and avoid fighting, they'll send guys out there to cut you off so you get cornered and things of that nature. They'll grab you if a chainsaw guy is around and try and turn you towards the chainsaw so you get killed that way. And it's a harrowing experience the first time because you only have your pistol at the very beginning and a couple
Mhm.
bullets. So it is a desperate fight for your life, and you have to just hope that you make it through that first series before you even get to the main part of the game. So that is 100% one of the best levels ever to open a game with.
Oh, and also with the enemies, they dodge now too in Resident Evil
Yes.
4.
Yeah, you have a smart enemy. All your enemies are intelligent. They aren't zombies anymore, which is frightening all in itself. To your point, they also use weapons as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. They,
So I have my most experience with Resident Evil 4 just because I beat the original one like 15 times, and then they had the mercenary game, and my friend and I used to try and see who could do the best on mercenary mode.
mm-hmm.
And then I got the remake, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And I've beaten it 6, 7 times. I have almost all the achievements. So if you can't tell, I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil 4.
Mm-hmm.
But 4 also has all the chapters laid out in a very interesting way. So you start in the village, which is to me the most memorable. And I wish there was more of the village segment, which the remake did justice for me on that. They added more to it. Then you go to the castle, and the castle changes it up. You get introduced to new enemy variety. You get introduced to new enemies overall, and you get to see a little bit of like how dark and twisted it really is. So we learned that the village was taken over, and you don't see any children because the parasite generally kills children.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you end up in this very dark claustrophobic environment, and your enemies instead of villagers now are these like demented monks coming at you. uh, do you want to say anything from the level design when we start getting into the castle?
Um. Well, compared to the previous three games, the entire levels or chapters are huge. Um, and it's not mean, compared to level design now, it's very predictable. With the castle, it was actually like, a real castle. It was like, layers. You had to parts where you could like sniper places, um, almost dungeon like sequences as well. There's one part where I think like we haven't talked about her, but Ashley, who Leon is rescuing, she's running through a hallway, and then like it kind of closes off, so Leon and her get separated, and then you have to like figure out a way to go and rescue her. It's very complex. It's not as simple as you have a simple map and it's kind of like this is this, this is this. There's layers to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm happy you brought up Ashley. So I should probably tell anybody who's listening to this, like, I don't know what that crap they're talking about. So Leon is now a special agent. He's no longer just a cop. He got some better training. He's at the federal level, and the president's daughter went missing. And people always find out like it's ridiculous to send one guy to go and rescue the president's daughter. From what I remember in the original one, he wasn't sent to rescue her. He was sent originally just to see if rumors were true. So I'll give him some leeway on that. He was just going out there to confirm or deny if there's any possibility that she was in this little fictional town in Spain. Turns out she was, but by the time he realizes that she probably is, he's cut off and he just gets kind of thrown into this terrible situation. Yes, looking back, things were predictable and there was a point to where you were going in the castle in the original one. I'll say that they did a good job of making you feel like you went through the transition, though. But I will also say that it's the first time you get some absolutely ridiculous things from the writing standpoint. So there's a segment where you go through and there's like hot lava underneath the castle, and there's these fire breathing statues that come down and they chase you around in it. And then there is a giant statue of the Castalians that's built and it's like robotic and it chases you. Those elements were areas that just infuriated me because it took me so far out of Resident Evil. But I still enjoyed Resident Evil 4 probably more than any of the previous like original titles, not counting the remakes, because I'll say that anybody out there, the remake of 2 is my overall favorite Resident Evil experience. But yeah, what did you think when you got to those scenes? Let's just start with like this giant robot thing that chases you. Like, what was that about?
It felt out of place. Like, if they're in the writer's room, they're like, someone who like loves robots was just like, let's add this.
There's a Gundam fan that was just like, yes, I gotta get this in there.
That's what it felt like. And then other people are like, okay, let's do it. But it was completely out of place.
It completely was. And it kind of feeds into that like kind of ridiculousness that I mentioned earlier, where it's like they just watched like 80s action movies. Or like, how extreme can we make this be? It's also something that I hated as a kid, and I hate to this day. I'm so happy they didn't implement it in the remake. Were QuickTime events. I hate QuickTime events.
Yes. Oh my god, that's the one thing that they added for that's just so annoying.
Yeah, anybody who doesn't know what a QuickTime event is, it's where basically a cutscene would come in, so it's supposed to be like a movie, but you have to pay attention because you have to like slam certain buttons at key moments, otherwise your character would just die in the middle of the cutscene.
There are games that the entire control system is just that. You just watch it and then you click buttons, and I hate those games so much.
Oh yeah, Telltale games. That's I don't. It's probably unfair to say it's all Telltale games, but I haven't seen a Telltale game that's not.
There was one that I was actually specifically thinking about. Something about rain. The name was something about rain.
I know exactly. That was a Telltale game. Yeah.
Oh, that was?
It was. Yeah, it was that. It came out right after maybe the Jurassic Park game came, because they did a Jurassic Park version as well, and they did the Walking Dead series. So yeah, they were all those type. Resident Evil 4 was just excessive, because especially if you were playing on harder difficulties, there were some that if you didn't catch it that very second, it killed you. Like I remember the Krauser fight scenes. I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, but that's like the worst thing that they can add to a game.
Yeah, so I'm so happy they got rid of it. That was a terrible design decision. So we're in the castle. You fight your way through the castle, and then Ashley gets kidnapped again because that's what Ashley does.
Mm-hmm.
I should probably back that up. There's an element where you play as Ashley in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's I consider it kind of like a side game. It's really just proving your skill that you don't need to have weapons because Ashley doesn't have anything on her, and you have to do this like little run around in a short maze area as these dudes are trying to kidnap you. And it's fun. I think the remake version of it was more interesting because they got rid of the maze portion of it and they put her in her own element of trying to rescue Leon, which was I just enjoyed it more. We'll get to the remake though. I keep trying to get to it because that's where I feel like Resident Evil 4 became itself. So you get out of the castle. Ashley's kidnapped again, and you go to the last act, which is both the scariest portion of it again, but also, in my opinion, like the weakest because they start getting away from the traditional Resident Evil horror factor, and now it's really just an action game. The island is a military island. There's a couple of bad guys that have the ability to shoot weapons, which is we know from Resident Evil 5, not the biggest thing to attract people that are horror fans.
Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is. But you also get one of the coolest enemies, which I'll talk about here in just a second. What do you want to say about the fourth chapter of Resident Evil 4?
Well, you mentioned the enemies that shoot things, and I think the direction they wanted to take Resident Evil was like, because after 4 it became 5, they kind of want to introduce that mechanic to the game to see how it was. But because the first 2 parts of Resident Evil 4 was so great, we kind of ignored that part of the last chapter. So it worked out great. And then when they shifted into 5 with all those things that we didn't like about 4, they thought it was going to be great because we loved 4 so much. Into 5, the terrible things into 5, it didn't work out that well. And crickets again. You're gonna add?
I'll do it if you want me to.
Oh, please do.
So the island is a mixed bag. I'm trying to focus just on the original Resident Evil 4, not the remake.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a whole lot of shooting because they had the JJ guys, which were the guys that shot at you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you got into the interior of the island, there were a couple of moments that were pretty scary. I think the best addition though is when you start getting towards the lab and they introduce the regenerators, which are probably standalone one of the best foes to go against because there's not a conventional way to easily kill them when you first meet them. What they are these terrible human experimentations that were created, and inside their body are large pieces of these parasites, and you can destroy the head, the arms, the legs, and the whole body will just regenerate itself as long as those parasites are inside the body. And there's different versions of them, right? Like there's the Iron Maiden, so it's kind of like a porcupine version of it, and it can grab you, and it just pushes its porcupine things out, and it like pierces your character. And they have this like weird sickening laugh, and on top of it, they're always in dark areas. It's never in a well-lit area. So you don't know where they are immediately when you come across them. They were just standout enemies for me, and probably the only thing that saved the island in the original one for me because I enjoyed those elements of it. But you have like the Krauser fight, right? Didn't care for all that. The weird commando chase scene, very out of place. Wasn't a fan of that element. It is what it is. I can spend all day complaining about the fourth chapter, but it had a satisfying conclusion because you get to you rescue Ashley, obviously. You get to the very end, and then you have your big standoff with a enemy, which is Sadler, right? And he becomes this giant walking spider crab thing that comes out of his head, and that was entertaining. It was a fun boss fight. they included a lot of elements of using the terrain to your advantage, and it wasn't just shooting barrels. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, it's the first boss fight where you actively had multiple elements of the terrain that you could use for in your advantage. So you had the bridges that dropped, you had a crane that you could swing around and it would hit him, and then you still had barrels, right, to shoot. You had elevations that you could climb up to try and avoid certain attacks, but then he had different attacks to try and get you there. So overall, it ended on a very good note. I just didn't like getting to that element. So I think the fourth chapter, or I guess the third chapter of it, if you just break it into 3 parts, the island segment was a weak segment to Resident Evil 4, but they ended so well that people kind of were willing to look past it, given how good the other 2 segments were.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and it worked out at the end, because like it's still iconic and it's still a great game to replay as well. But I just remembered they also added kind of like a codec to the story where you call someone and you talk to them.
Yes, yeah. So you had that Hunnigan, right?
Yeah.
So in the middle of it, you'd have the snake. You know?
Yeah. Which I found like really funny, but it didn't harm the game at all, and it was actually just kind of nice where, you have that human interaction instead of like reading letters and stuff.
So you have, if you enjoyed that, there's a parody version of Resident Evil 4 you can watch called Days of Our Life. And it is hilarious. And I'll send it to you after this, but they take all those cutscenes and they just dub over it. And
oh my god,
it is 100% worth like the hour and 40 watch time to get through the whole game with this parody version of it. Yeah, they add Hunnigan in there, who is like your contact with the Secret Service. They never tell you. I don't recall who she is or who Leon's directly working for, but it keeps you in that element of like what's going on and like things that are happening outside of it. But to that point, like there's an element where like right around maybe the castle or the island where you can't talk to her anymore.
Yeah, it gets hijacked by that little guy. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name right now either. It'll come to me right after we end this series.
Yeah.
Oh, what about the helicopter sequence? What did you think about the helicopter sequence? Because we completely bypassed that.
Can you remind me again?
Yeah, so on the island, you finally get a hold of Hunnigan, and she sends a helicopter to come help you. And you come out to this element, and you're like surrounded by bad guys. And there's like big fortress you have to try and fight through to get to the end. And you're like, I don't know if I can do this. And then a helicopter comes out, and it's Hunnigan sent this dude, and he has machine guns on his side and rockets, and you just have to run through the area and let him blow up like areas for you as you progress through the area. And then right when you think, yeah, this is great, they shoot the helicopter down. From a storyline, it was that was the one time I was like, this, because I was getting fed up with the island at that point. And then they add that, and I was like, this is cool, this is interesting. And they shot it down. I was like, well, they have to have a reason for me to not get on the helicopter, I guess. So, but I'll take it from your perspective.
For some reason, I barely remember that sequence, because all I remember is being like, okay, they shot it down. Like, what's the use? Like, this is not gonna be great.
Yeah, I'll say that it was much harder in the remake version of Resident Evil 4 with the helicopter sequence. But let's talk about the remake then. Like, true to the story, they cut out, in my opinion, probably the worst elements to it. So no quick time events. Leon is much more of a laid back actual agent, no more corny, weird lines. Yeah, that's right. You haven't played. I'm ruining it for you.
No, it's okay. Like I watch clips on YouTube.
Yeah, he doesn't have any weird sayings. The action in the cutscenes is no longer. He doesn't do any backflips. He never does anything that was like that. It's a much more dirty, gritty game, which is in the way I experienced Resident Evil 4 the first time going through it, is how I feel Resident Evil, the remake, was actually supposed to be taken. It's a Resident Evil game at the end of the day, right? Survival horror. They brought back the storage system, so you'll be happy about that. So you can store things now. It's not a box. You go to your save icon or your little, typewriter, and it's in there. So they also expanded it. There's a couple additional weapons out there. Go ahead.
With the storage system, it's not a box you go up to. You can access it anytime.
No, so you have to find a typewriter.
Oh, okay, so it's with the typewriter. Okay.
Yeah, it's not its own physical location. You just have to get to the typewriter, and when you open the save icon, there's a storage at the top.
Oh, okay.
And then you can send things to the storage anytime you want, but you can't access it. So if you send something there, you can't pull it back out easily.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's certain items that you can't send. So they introduce a degradation system for your knife, which is, I'm trying to remember if they did that in Resident Evil 2 now, if your knife broke in Resident Evil 2. So your knife would break, so you can't rely on your knife 24/7. But on top of that, you can find random knives like kitchen knives and boot knives, and you can use those to supplement your knife as you get it repaired in between elements, which was cool because it added a little bit more of like something you needed to worry about from health. And you couldn't, if you got ambushed by a really strong enemy that you weren't expecting, the knife, if your knife wasn't fixed, you couldn't save yourself. So that was a cool added variable to it. They fixed a lot of the weird scenes. So there's no robot. You don't get chased by it anymore. They took, I'm going to ruin this for you. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I think they called it Thing 131. That weird guy that in the original one, you're in the box cart and he like chases you and it falls. He has like a scorpion tail.
Yeah.
He's not a Leon enemy anymore. He's an Ada enemy. So Leon never fights him. Yeah. Okay. It's very interesting. The village is a little bit more expanded. So the original village is still there, but there's different areas that you go to. So like when you go to the lake and the giant fish is there, that area around the lake is much larger. And then once you defeat the fish guy, there's an entire area that you get in the boat and you go and explore, which there was an element to that in the original, but it's much larger and it's built into the game because you have to go hunting for pieces of a key to unlock a door later on in the game. And then there's a lot more treasure throughout. So they encourage you to go back through areas apart from the story to explore more. And it was a lot of fun. Again, the village, in my opinion, is the absolute strongest element to it. It stands to that test of games wish they could end as hard as the first in that first segment. The castle, they added a lot of segments to it, and it's so same, but there's so many elements that were changed. I'm trying to think of like where to really pinpoint. I think one of the biggest elements that stands out in my head was they have a second fight with one of those giants. So in the original game, you fight one giant guy in the village. In the castle, you fight an additional guy indirectly, where you're trying to cut across a part of the wall to get to another segment of the castle. And while you're doing that, one of those guys is like up on a hill throwing rocks at you the whole time. And you can't get away from him until you get to the end and there's a cannon and you shoot him with the cannon, and then you can escape. And that was it was way more fun to do that segment than it ever was to do any type of quick time event in the original game. So there's that.
Did they keep the treasure system?
Yes, they revamped it a little bit. So for anybody who's not familiar, there's an economy system in Resident Evil 4 to encourage you to upgrade your weapons, buy new weapons, things of that nature. And in the original one, there was like treasure, and you could find little pieces of treasure that kind of went into some of the bigger pieces and make it more valuable. So that still exists in the remake. But spinels, which were in the original one just things that you could spend and then get more money, that is a separate economy system for buying special items. So
special items are like herbs and ammo.
No, you can't buy ammo at all. You use the spinels to buy, like if you want a map of the area that shows you where treasure is.
Oh dang!
Yeah, you could use it to buy the maps. But there's so many items on there that you would never be able to get enough spinels in one playthrough to get all the items. So you have to figure out which one you want to get. There's special attachments like the Red 9, the old pistol. If you want the stock to it, you have to use spinels to get it now. You can't just buy or find the stock to it. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of unique items that are on there. There's a coupon system that you can buy, and I think it's like 100 spinels. Somebody out there can correct me. If you buy the coupon, you can get the exclusive unlock on a weapon without upgrading the entirety of the weapon, which was awesome. So when I found out about that, I got my coupon, and the first thing I did was I spent it on the striker shotgun because you get infinite ammo on the striker shotgun. So I was like, boom, done. What else was there? There's different treasures added throughout the entire game. Man, they really revamped it. The more I think about it, you have to repair certain items. So your body armor gets repaired, your knives get repaired.
So things break now in the remake.
Yes, not everything. There's just a couple key items that break. What else was there around that system? Oh, there's a crafting system now too.
Well, Resident Evil kind of always had a little kind of crafting system, but did they like expand it more in the remake?
Yeah, just a little bit. So aside from herbs, you can make ammunition if you find parts and gunpowder. And then there's small parts and there's large parts. And if you find small parts, you can make like handgun ammo, I think rifle ammo, and submachine gun ammo. If you get large parts, you can make shotgun, magnum. You can make hand grenades if you find the right pieces to them. And then they just added a lot more weapons to it. So there's not just hand grenades anymore. There's also large hand grenades to it. You know, I say that now, and I think they got rid of the incendiary grenades. That's not a thing anymore in the remake. But I didn't feel like I needed them either. So I might be wrong, but I can't remember finding one now. Yeah, I don't think the incendiary grenades are in the game anymore. Overall, I feel like it's the way that Resident Evil 4 was supposed to be played. I get that they cut out like some of the funny moments that people really remember in the original OG one, but I didn't personally feel that it was a negative, and I felt like it's a more realistic development of who Leon was supposed to be after the events of Resident Evil 2. Ada's segment. Now, I've only played Ada's segment once. She is much more of a fast-paced campaign than the original one. There's a lot of times where you're on a time to get through something on her segment, and I don't do well on timed segments. Like time segments just are not my friend. And there's like 3 or 4 segments where she's timed in her storyline. Only played it once though, just to get a couple of the achievements and say that I beat it on like whatever the hardest difficulty was and be done with it. But she has a lot more cool gadgets assigned to her now. So she still has the grappling hook. She also has this scanner so that she can see through and see computerized components in certain segments. And that was cool. She has the ability to see certain things that are left on the ground using that tool. So they added her own mechanics, and I enjoyed her campaign in the remake more than I enjoyed it playing the original game. I think in the original game I only played it once. I never went back to it just because it wasn't that fun. I can see going back and playing her campaign in the remake again.
Yeah.
Enemy wise, they added a lot more arenas, which enabled some of the enemies to be better utilized. So there's an element where there's the Bella sisters. So for anybody who's not familiar, you have 2 different bad guys that have chainsaws. You have Dr. Salvador and you have the Bella sisters. Dr. Salvador is a big heavy-set dude with a burlap potato sack over his head. And the Bella sisters are twin sisters that have their faces wrapped in bandages. Both types of enemies wield chainsaws. The Bella sisters have an entire segment where you're in this kind of like courtyard area, and you have to get a crank to open a door. And when you find it, they burst through, and they're supplemented by a bunch of enemies to back them up. And you're with Ashley, so you're trying to protect her while you're fighting off all these enemies, and you have the Bella sisters. And you can't just rush the door, because not only will they get you while you're trying to crank the door, part of the key that you find out later, one of the sisters has, so you have to fight them. And it was a nice addition. The one downside to that entire segment in Resident Evil 4, the remake, is if you remember in the original, there's a scene after the cabin fight where you can go left and you face like one of the giants, or you go right and you face the Bella sisters. You don't get that option in the remake. You fight both one way or another. So, but that's a minor thing. Yeah, I'd have to say overall, I enjoyed the remake of 4 a lot more than the original, just because it got rid of elements I didn't like in the original. The island still sucks. So
that's not going to change, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like Resident Evil games, especially recently, they struggle with their last act. Which, I'm going to go back to what we talked about in Resident Evil 2, both the original and the remake. I didn't feel like it struggled there, because when you get out of the police department, you end up in the lab, and it's cool exploring the lab. It's dark, creepy. You have your usual enemies in a super creepy environment, blood smeared on everything as the research team is dead. One struggled because I think it was just antiquated engine. We didn't, looking at it with rose glasses in nostalgia, whatever you want to call it, it worked. It was fine. But they tried to copy that formula all the way through. I'd say all the way up to 5, and then we're not going to talk about 6 because that's a whole nother animal. But it just doesn't work every single time. 3 got away with it because it's a continuation of 1's story, but we also already knew what we were getting into with 2 preceding that. But by the time we got to 4, that formula, I feel like, just didn't work out, especially with the way that the cult is laid out. They don't have Umbrella's funding, so their labs are mixed matched, very, like, I would compare it to a meth lab. Like, you're in dirty environments,
medieval.
Yeah, medieval stuff. It's whatever they could find and scrap together. There is, that element where like the regenerators are, and it's a little bit more of an actual laboratory. But you find a lot of labs that you're walking around, and it's like a dude's table with like some glasses and some stuff mixed into it, and some papers scattered around. And that's the environment that you're in. There's like something dead in the corner that they've been cutting up while the dude was doing studies. So by the time you get to the 4th chapter there, and I feel like they relied too heavily on the action sequences to carry the 4th chapter through, which I will give it to the remake. They it's still there. Don't get me wrong. The action sequences are still abundant. They did go with a little bit more of a horror approach, because like when you get to the labs, there's a segment where Leon turns on his light, and the only light you have is the light that's on his shoulder. And that element really adds why the regenerators were so scary. And they added the regenerators a lot more in it as well. You face off against them several times throughout the island, whereas in the original one, I can remember like 3 or 4 elements, but they weren't as big of a nuisance, I felt like. So I ruined 4 for you. You have to go out there and get it now.
I've played myself now.
Yeah. All right. So I feel like this was really me just talking to you the whole time. No,
that's good.
You're gonna hear all my other ones, and you're like, "Wow, Sean lets everybody else talk way more than he let me talk." So,
no, perfectly fine.
So let's do this. I'm going to ask. I'm not going to give my rating because I feel like I kind of gave everybody. Let's go through the games. Give it a star rating of 1 to 5, and then if you'd recommend it for everybody, or if you like, not obviously children. When we say everybody, like anybody who's interested in it, or if you feel like that person has to really be dedicated to going back. So we'll start with the original Resident Evil 1, not the remake, just the standalone RE1 game. What's your 5-star rating on it?
5.
Okay. And is it for everybody, or do you think at this point you'd have to just be a big Resident Evil fan to go play the original?
I think it's for everybody because the first Resident Evil is like a whole new experience with survivor horror. It's like the founding of survivor horror.
Okay. And then let's do Resident Evil 1, the remake. You can go with the GameCube version, whatever version you want to go with. What's your 5-star rating out of the remake?
I have to say 5 as well because it adds things that you wish you had from the original. So if you like the original, you play the remake and you'll have a lot more fun, but understanding the story of the game and the mechanics of it.
And is it for everybody as well, or only people who want the Resident Evil experience?
I have to say for everyone who wants the Resident Evil experience.
See, I would have given it the other way around. Like the OG Resident Evil would have been for anybody who wants the Resident Evil experience, and the remake would have been for anybody. Because that's if I had to make my wife play the game, I'd play the remake. But what's your justification for it?
So I think people need to play the original because of how it's designed, the controls, the limitations you have, the scarcity. You need to experience that. But if you're a fan of it, you should get the benefits of the remake.
Okay, I get that. And see, I came from just because I made my wife play, and yes, I made her play it. So I made her play the remake of Resident Evil 2, and she did really well on it. I wouldn't make her play the original Resident Evil just because I could see her getting frustrated with how antiquated everything was. And somebody's going to get mad at me about that, but it's just the truth. If you're not a gamer by nature, you don't want to go back to it.
And the new generation of gamers are a little spoiled.
They are. They 100% are.
So, you have to put in your time, so you need to play the original. You need to earn it.
You have to suffer the way I suffer.
Yes, exactly.
All right. The original Resident Evil 2. What's your 5-star rating?
5.
Okay. And is it for everybody or just those who want the Resident Evil experience? I feel like I know what you're going to say.
I think for people who want the Resident Evil experience.
Okay. I convinced you. That's what it was. Okay. Resident Evil 2 remake star rating.
I can't give it a star rating because I haven't played any of the remakes.
Oh, really? I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm having this conversation with you this whole time.
No, because so I can't give it a star rating, but of course, I watched it. It's in my shopping cart. I've watched the gameplay and stuff, and I have to say it's for everyone who wants it's for everyone.
Yeah, I'll say again. I had my wife play through it, and her biggest issue was I play on a mouse and keyboard. She probably would have done a little bit better with a controller, but once she figured out the mouse and keyboard, she had a lot of fun with it. And for me, it was fun watching her just go through it because when there was jump scares, it was great watching her just flip out and not know what to do on the keyboard and have to readjust really quickly.
Oh no!
There was a moment where a liquor jumped out at her. She didn't know what to do, and she hit something, and she opened my Windows control panel, and it came up. I was like, "Oh no!"
Do that to her.
She had fun. I will say that we tried to do the same thing with Resident Evil 4, but the village was, I'd say, I said it earlier, it opened so it's a hardcore opening, especially if you're not used to trying to fight for your life. She didn't know how to get through the village segment, and I had to help her through it. But I feel like that kind of dissuaded her from trying to go any further. unfortunately.
Mhm.
Okay, Resident Evil 3, 5
So,
stars or not.
so Resident Evil 3 is going to be complex because I want to give it 5 stars for nostalgia purposes. But in reality, as a Resident Evil game, it needs, okay, please have mercy on me.
I'm not the one judging you.
Now I'm talking to the audience.
Oh Lord, yeah, no promises there.
3 stars.
Wow, a 3-star. I thought you were going to say 4. Why 3? I got to hear it.
Because it, like you said, it deviates so much from Resident Evil. And like in reality, it did. Like it's like the foundation of this evolvement. Evolve? Am I saying that right?
Evolution.
Evolution, yeah, of the evolution of Resident Evil. And it's the foundation of it. So as a Resident Evil game, 3 stars. Nostalgia purposes, 5 stars because you still love it so much. But from its predecessors, it's very different.
I feel like you're about to hurt my feelings. All right, Resident Evil 4. What's your 5-star rating?
Okay, Resident Evil 4, next generation console. At this point, it needed to evolve, and like it came out like around 2004, 2005.
That sounds about right without looking it up.
Yes, and at that time, like there was like similar games in their evolution as well, and like compared to like the games I played during that time, like Devil May Cry, another one I'm trying to think of the name, but like kind of like the next revolution of graphics. Resident Evil 4 gave you longer hours of gameplay than the previous games and other games I was playing at the time. Not only that, it introduced the store system where you can purchase weapons and stuff like that without having to pay real money to get upgrades.
Yeah, game developers take note. Microtransactions, nobody likes them.
Yes, so it introduced it every like the current evolution of games and introduced it in the most perfect way, where like it involved now to like spending real money on upgrades and stuff like that, which is ridiculous. But the way it started out was perfect, so I have to give it 5 stars.
Okay. And I would go through I feel like I have to go out there just buy you the remakes now so that you'll experience.
I'm actually gonna get the remakes. Like I said, it's in my shopping cart. I just need the gumption to sit down, actually purchase it, install it for like how many hours?
Yeah, at least if you get 2, I think all the updates are done. So like once you install it, it should be a one-time done deal.
Yeah.
Not like some of these games where like I'm playing soccer too right now, and it's like every other week I feel like there's a 2-hour long update that I have to install.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a headache in game development.
Yeah.
Always patches, updates, everything. It's not very.
You gotta get back involved in it and fix that problem so that people can play your game and
my game is going to be one and done. That's why it's taking me a while because I'm trying to add everything I don't need to do updates.
Well, when you get it out, we'll have another conversation and maybe we can do it.
You're gonna be my beta tester.
There we go. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna play it, and then I'm gonna complain to you about all the microtransactions that you implemented. All right, Faith. Well, I know you introduced yourself in the previous video, but why don't you take a moment, introduce One-Eyed Monsters for everybody that's
listening? Yes, I'm the owner of One-Eyed Monsters. One-Eyed Monsters offers entertainment, like video games, comics, shorts, all hand-drawn by me, no AI. And you can go to oneeyemonsters.com or find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, as official__ O.E.M, or on Instagram, which is official O.E.M altogether.
Perfect. And of course, as always, I will link it to the video. Faith, thank you so much. And to my audience,
me again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with me. And to my audience, again, I'm Sean Fitzgerald, the author of A Full to Extinction and Sinner's Pass. If I don't hear from you soon, stay frosty.